Well, this is sort of fun, I would say, sort of cock and bull set of stories for young children. It's got three stories: how the pig became dirty, how the saras, the crane, got its long neck and legs, and how the langur got its black face. Well, the biologists may have their own explanations and so on, based on evolution and what have you, but the real answers lie here. They lie in curious things like scented erasers and invisible ink and dirty soaps and what have you. So it's basically a set of stories that are supposed to just sort of tickle the imagination of young children. To begin with, actually, I became fond of writing in my longish 15-odd-year career at the Times of India. Earlier than that, I was in advertising, and when in a bind, I would sort of step in for the copywriter and do the odd bit of copy. So I think over time, I and colleagues felt I could write a little bit. So at the Times of India, I tried my hand, and I had about 4 or 5 times my articles were published on the edit page or whatever. So I knew I could write, and they would generally get a decent response or whatever. But of course, I never tried my hand at fiction writing at all, and certainly not children's fiction writing. So this was really just an exercise in seeing whether I could do it. So when the daughters urged me to try my hand at it, so I basically sort of just tried to shoot out one story, and it came out relatively fast. But the story was clearly there in my mind. Had been sort of cooking for maybe 25 years. So I just did it relatively, I would say, it took me all of a couple of days or whatever. And of course, one then sort of chipped away at it and made it better. And then once that found some approval with the publisher and others, then I got into the second and third story. So the first story really is about how the pig became dirty, where the essential thesis of all three stories is similar. In all cases, the animals started with quite the opposite trait of what they eventually became. So the pig, for example, was a squeaky clean fellow who liked having 3 baths every day and who kept his house totally spick and span. But through a set of circumstances, largely to do with this naughty pair of monkeys called Nut and Cut, they play some horrible tricks on him because of his cleanliness, they would have to have a bath once a week or something. And they hated that. So they said, is there a way to get the pig from wanting to be clean? So they hatched this elaborate plot whereby the pig felt that it was just not worth having these baths every day, and he decided to adopt a much more sort of chill, sort of lifestyle, became a dirty pig. And similarly, the second story, for example, starts with the crane as being a really fat, round as a ball kind of a bird. And again, through some circumstances and through some pranks that again Nut and Cut play on her, she becomes this thin, long bird. And in the third story, the animals get together and have revenge at the monkeys. So who were actually till then had regular faces, brown fur or whatever, and they find a way where the monkeys would themselves, end up blackening their face, and they became langurs as a result. So it was basically fun stories like that. Sure. The illustrator, a young man of 23 called Vijay Manure, I think he's done a fabulous job, I must say, and I think, I'll just show you some of the illustrations, but they really capture the soul of the stories beautifully. The way this, this collaboration happened, I'll show you some more of the pages, just to give you a sense. So here's the pig, here are the horrible monkeys, and so on. A little later, here is the sort of Saras, who's a fat, round little bird, and finally becomes this elegant thing that we know. And so on. Now Vijay is actually, how I didn't know him from before at all. I think, we were looking for somebody who could really, bring alive expressions on animal faces. So we did have, initially we looked at a couple of illustrators who were already on the panel, publishers panel, who were very stylish, and they did a lot of very good, the graphic quality was extremely good. But I felt they lacked the sort of the twinkle in the eye, or the sense of mischief, or the sense of terror. The expressions that were sort of, showed the emotions that the animals were going through. So I asked a friend, in an agency called Taproot, it's one of the finer agencies of India. So can you give me a young illustrator, who will not charge the earth and the moon, because the budgets are sort of modest. So he talked about this young man who was he had just interviewed, who was still in college actually at that time, and who's now working with Taproot. His portfolio had some lovely animal stories. So I met Vijay and I said, wow, this is just what we need. He did a couple of illustrations of the Saras and one more character. And we said, yes, this is on. So he came on board. I think they seem to be able to relate to the kind of, the pigs being bullied by these two, bandars. And I could see some of the meeker ones clearly with rapt attention, especially in those scenes. But I guess in some form or the other, bullying, especially in primary school, is pretty much is commonplace. So the fact that, how that, chemistry played out and what happened there, I think that's of interest to them. And in the sessions, at least, what I do is I take the story up to the point when one of the monkeys says, oh, I got a plan. And then I ask the kids to guess what that plan is. And that really brings them alive. And I found it exhilarating, the number of different ideas that the kids came out with, including one that was really, ingenious. He said that, these monkeys go and dirty the mirror. So when the pig goes to see the mirror, he thinks he's dirty already. And afterwards, over time, gets so disheartened that he stops trying to be clean. And so on. There were some beautiful, offbeat and really unusual ideas that I'm sure adults could never come up with. So I think it's this, I guess, transformation stories have an appeal with children anyway, or I guess even with adults. But the idea that there was some thing that they normally deal with, like maybe some scented eraser or whatever, that was at the trigger point of how the animal changed. I think they can also relate to those, because all the objects, the kind of characters are from their own world. Okay, I think the book would be relevant to a reasonably large age group, I do feel. Maybe starting as low as 3 or 4 years of age, where it would be more the parents reading out the book. But the storylines are essentially simple, even if sometimes the words are going to be beyond their comprehension, in which case a person reading out could clearly explain those words and so on. All the way, I guess, to 10 and 11. But I have actually had friends, children of that age group, and they seem to have vibed